Superstition. The Oxford Dictionary defines it as a widely held but unjustified belief in supernatural causation leading to certain consequences of an action or event or a practice based on belief. Having superstition and sports together in a sentence makes sense to sports lovers. Now add the word curses in the mix, and the one most well-known curse that has kept my favorite baseball team from even attending a World Series. If your mind was set on the Chicago Cubs, then you can pat yourself on the back because yes, I am a Cubs fan, and today I'll enlighten you about the events that devoted fans believe have kept the Chicago Cubs from the World Series. I will discuss the events in order that have devastated Cub fans, like the Billy Goat curse, the black cat that had crawled behind Ron Santo, and the name that is like nails on a chalkboard, Steve Bartman. October 6, 1945, Game 4 of the World Series at Wrigley Field. Like many fans that attended that day, William Cianis, a Chicago bar owner, had bought two box tickets for $7.20 for him and his goat to enjoy the Chicago Cubs against Detroit. Until the fourth inning, Cubs owner P.K. Wrigley wanted the pair to leave because the goat stunk. As William Cianis and his goat were being escorted out of the park, he was heard saying, "The Cubs ain't gonna win no more. The Cubs will never win a World Series, so as long as the goat is never allowed in Wrigley Field." The Cubs had lost that day to Detroit 4-1, and the Detroit would go on to win the World Series in the seventh game. After knowing this, Cianis promptly sent a telegram to P.K. Wrigley that said, "Who stinks now?" September 9th, 1969. During the end of the season, the Chicago Cubs were first and on a 9-game lead from the New York Mets, and with baseball legends like Ron Santo, Ernie Banks, and Fergie Jenkins, it seemed as if the Cubs had a sure shot at going to the World Series. Though the curse had done it again. During a game, the Cubs against the Mets, a black cat had managed its way into the Shea Stadium. The cat was making circles around Ron Santo to the on-deck circle and passed by the Chicago Cubs dugout and quickly disappeared underneath the stands. The game had continued with the Mets' victory 7-1. After that incident and the loss of a game had derailed the Cubs' chance of making it back on track, which Chicago Cubs author Doug Feldman referred to the 1969 season for the Cubs a miracle collapse. And that same year, the Mets won the World Series. So that's at the game where the Billy Goat curse, that's the goat. And that's William Cianis getting escorted. And that's the black cat that went around Ron Santo and the Cubs dugout. October 14th, 2003, Game 6 of the playoffs. The Chicago Cubs led 3 games against the Florida Marlins. Jeff Gowen, a producer for Fox Sports, said this was a Chicago Cubs game, playing only 1 game to get to the World Series, and the energy of Wrigley Field was ecstatic and excitement. At the top of the 8th inning, the Cubs led game 3-0. Luis Castillo hits a short fly ball into the left field corner of the stands. Left fielder for the Cubs, Moises Alou, heads toward the ball, gets ready to time his leap to catch the ball that is heading towards the first row, while a guy with glasses, headphones, and a sweater is also going after the ball. Alou is unable to catch the ball, gesturing towards the fan, also known as Steve Bartman, who prevented him from catching the ball and slamming his hands down, basically throwing a fit. After that, the mood changed, and the shortstop Alex Gonzalez drops a routine double play, and that same inning, the Cubs give up 8 runs to the Marlins, which keep them going for Game 7, and the Chicago Cubs lose that game 9-6. After the game with Steve Bartman, Cubs manager Dusty Baker said, "It has nothing to do with the curse. It has to do with a fan interference and a very uncharacteristic error by Gonzalez. History has nothing to do with this. Nothing." Cub fans might disagree with that statement. That season in 2003 was the closest the Chicago Cubs have been to the World Series, and they haven't won a championship since 105 years ago. And this is Moises Alou, and that's Steve Bartman in the way of the ball. The ball's right here. That's not enough sound. So today I've enlightened you about the events that devoted fans like me believe have kept the Chicago Cubs from the World Series. With a stinky goat, a mischievous cat, and a fan interference, does it seem likely so? Like Harry Carey, a Chicago Cubs announcer for 16 years, had said at the end of the 1991 Cubs season, someday the Chicago Cubs are going to be in the World Series. Maybe sooner than we think. And I agree that someday, curse or not. Thank you.
Do you want their time?
No, it's okay, I've got it also. But just in case, you know, I might need it, you know, but right now I don't. All right, Kat, why don't you tell us what you thought of the speech?
Do I stand up?
No, you don't have to stand up, but you do need to speak loud and clear.
Okay. I was a little confused when she started off at first, but then it came together really well. I really liked that she gave the definition, and then she gave examples about what she was going to talk about, and then she talked about each example. But I did feel like she stumbled across her words a few times, and that the visual aids maybe should have been presented while she was talking about each topic instead of after. But overall, I think it was really interesting, and it kept my attention.
Okay. Yeah, I like the definition as an attention device. It gives us a little bit of suspense, and then when you reveal what you're talking about, I think it makes it more interesting. There's an excellent transition to the body of the speech. You have a very good layout of what the secondary points are going to be. It's organized chronologically around those particular events. So that's fine. I heard information being cited during the presentation for the most part, so that was good. You have interesting descriptions of what's going on. I do have to agree, though, it seemed strange that you didn't integrate the visuals into the part where you're telling those stories. They seem like they're afterthoughts rather than being mixed in there, and I think that would have made them a little bit more interesting. In fact, a couple of them you could have even used the visual as like a signpost for that point, and let me tell you what happened here, and then you could talk about it, and we'd have that picture in our head and right in front of us while you were talking about it, and I think it would have worked a little bit more effectively. However, I did like all the images that you had. That worked pretty well. Nice, like I said, nice historical references. I also like the language that you use for the most part when you're talking about the both at the beginning and at the end of the speech, you know, from personal perspective. I think you needed to be a little bit less dependent on the script when you're doing that part, because that's you talking, you know, and it's you talking to, this is my favorite team, and, you know, hopefully sooner rather than later, you know, that kind of stuff. And when you have to read that, it just doesn't come off the same way. And we'll be talking about delivery issues on the next go round, but that would be one of those things to focus on then. All right, thank you.